I'm very nervous about the House. I'm very nervous about a lot of down ballot races. And, we've been talking about 2024. We've got New Hampshire that's tomorrow and have been discussing 2024. I don't know what the RNC is doing to get things together. I just don't. I know they tweet a lot. Twitter doesn't, or X doesn't really, that is social media in that regard does not really move the needle. If it did, you would have Gen Z out voting in droves. There are a lot of groups that base the majority of their movement digitally, and they don't get people elected in the Republican Party. They don't get Republicans elected. If the digital sphere was as influential digitally or in the meat space as it is digitally, AOC would have a lot more pull in Congress instead of kind of being a clown. Do you see what I'm saying? There's the digital world and the real world. And the real world still requires real world solutions and real world practices and real world actions. And the digital, just simply limiting it to bitching and moaning digitally doesn't cut it. And this situation with, because it's not just energy, there's a number of issues that Republicans have got to get better talking about going into midterms. And this is what I want to put out to you. I previewed, showed you, I'm not going to play that whole ad. The ad that it's, I guess it's the first official attack ad from the Biden campaign for the general election, and they're going on abortion. And Republicans are not great at messaging on abortion, and there's this huge divide in the right in terms of the best way to achieve pro-life policies. And I have friends who are activists. This is their main issue. And I have them on both sides of this divide. So there's, group A, which thinks that you need to go full on whole hog. It needs to be immediate and there's not going to be any compromise, no quarter. It has to be full on what we want as a policy or everybody's a rhino and it's a failure. And then we have the people which are wanting to move incrementally, and they're not moving as fast as Group B is not moving as fast as Group A would like. And Group A is, some of them think that Group B, they're kind of hedging and hemming and hawing because they think that maybe they're not fully committed to the cause as, Group A is. And I don't know what's in these people's hearts, but I do think that you're not going to do anything if not incrementally. I do think it has to be an incremental thing, especially when you look at where Americans poll on it. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't want a full-on pro-life issue. No, it means you're working towards it. It doesn't mean that you're going to abandon the cause or that you're going to take your ball and go home if you can't get the whole thing or nothing immediately. And so, but here's the problem that's being created because of this divide. With any kind of big tent, or let's stop saying big tent. Let's start saying with any kind of coalition. It's the 80-20 rule. Reagan had always said, my 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. And people on the right do not know how to live by this law. They have no idea how to do this still. This is why Democrats are successful. And it doesn't mean that the disagreements on the 20% are sidelined. It's just we're going to fight those when we're trying to stave off wins on the 80% or stave off losses on the 80%. We're going to fight the 20%. And they just know how to strategize around that better, whereas the right doesn't. And the right loves to have all their slap fights publicly to be used against them because we're stupid. So we are. I mean, in terms of strategy, I don't run the RNC GOP stuff. That's, party people. So the issue then becomes you have this big coalition. You have people who agree on 80% of things. What are the 80%? The economy, right? Taxation, right now, immigration, energy, a lot of the CRT stuff, all of that, the lockdowns, the quote unquote vaccines, all of that, that goes into the 80% pile. Then you got the 20% stuff. And abortion, because there are varying levels of where people fall on it, I would put that in the 20%. That's not to downgrade it or diminish it as an important issue, but it's to accurately reflect where people in the coalition on the right, not just the Republican Party, not just conservatives, but people you need to actually elect a Republican leader where they fall on that issue. It goes in the 20%. And this is what Democrats are doing. They are looking at all of the issues that the coalition disagrees on, and they are going to start churning out attack ads on every one of those issues. And abortion is one of them. They had a little success in Wisconsin because the GOP, A, didn't know how to fight, and B, didn't know how to message there. And it's not that Republicans can't fight or can't message. It's just that they are not very good, and not every state is the same. Not every state's leaders and not every state's message makers are the same. Case in point, look at Florida. Florida was a swing state. I'll say it again. Florida was a swing state. Everyone likes to erase all of the history before DeSantis got in office and act like Florida was a reliable red state. I'll tell you what, it wasn't. I remember distinctly 45 minutes into election night in 2012, and I'm doing election night coverage, and I'm watching the results from Florida come in, and I knew the moment that it came in with a couple of different districts that the whole race was lost. Romney had lost. I knew it. Because Florida was a swing state. Florida has gone Democrat before. Florida has been purple, and it has not gone reliably red until this very last election, when it went not just red, it went red by a landslide. They were registering more Republican voters than Democrats. The Hispanic community, you had gays and lesbians in Miami Beach that were voting for Republicans, because everyone was agreeing on the 80%, and the messaging coming out of the Republican Party in the state of Florida was focusing on the 80%. Not to diminish the 20%, not to say that someone's interest in any of the 20% issues were unimportant, or not to say that any of those issues only should represent 20% of, the public consciousness. But this is about strategy, and it is about winning. And if you want to win for your issue, then you've got to be a little bit more Machiavellian about strategizing on how to win some of these seats. And that's what they did, and they won. And the difference between, the court battle in Wisconsin, where abortion was a feature, and in Florida Republicans did not allow Democrats to shape the messaging. And by the RNC not getting ahead of this, the GOP not getting ahead of this, they're trying to recreate that here nationally. So the first attack ad coming out is one on abortion. And they're going to try to drive these issues on the 20% and separate this coalition on the right. And if the GOP can't counter it, the Democrats will be successful. I don't know what the RNC and GOP are doing. Now, going into this, I'll be damned. I'm tired of hearing about legal struggles from I don't want to hear about Trump's legal struggles. I get it. There's a witch hunt going on. I think that the New York case is stupid. The Doc case in Mar-a-Lago is a little crazy. I get that there's a whole other separate issue that has to be separated from the candidate so that you can see what big government looks like. And the reason why you got to separate that from the candidate is because you have to distill it down to make it look like it can affect every single voter. Voters are going to disassociate themselves from it after a certain point if they think it only affects Trump. You have to tell people how this affects them, how it could affect them, and the potentials that this has to trickle down all the way to their dining room table. Where's the GOP and RNC on that messaging? Nowhere. No, they're allowing Democrats to steamroll over everybody with these issues, and this is their first attack ad, and no response from the RNC or GOP on it. On immigration, Republicans are crap at talking immigration. They're horrible at it. I was at an event over the weekend. It was a fundraising event for a conservative candidate in House District 26. And this is one of those districts where we have a reliably conservative candidate. And again, I don't want to see vengeance campaigns against people who didn't endorse any kind of front runner, because you'll cost us districts and cost us seats in a time when we're already up to lose the House and we need every seat possible. There's a guy who came in from out of state. He's from New York. He just moved into the area, hadn't lived in there, has been there maybe for a year. And he's getting his father-in-law is a friend, but it's a well-known commentator, and is bankrolling entirely the PAC that's funding this guy's campaign. And they can't talk about immigration. Made a bunch of Hispanic Americans mad at an event where he was saying, well, we can't allow anybody to come in at all, and just closing it down. Here's why Republicans got to get smarter about this. And this is why I like the candidate I'm talking about is John Huffman in the House District 26. Because I think that people have got to be smart when they talk about immigration. You can't just shut everything down. Here's what is so unbelievably awesome about America. I've said this a million times, and you've heard me say it. You can't go to France and be French. You can't go to Italy and be Italian. But you can be from anywhere. You can be from anywhere. You can be like Juan, our associate producer from The First. He's the exec producer from The First. He works as an associate producer on the radio show. He's from Puerto Rico, and he's American. He wants to be free. That's the uniting factor with all of this. I have friends that have immigrated from Spain. I have friends that have immigrated from Taiwan. I have friends that have immigrated from South Korea. I have friends that have immigrated even from the UK. And they're American, because there is one identifying factor that unites everyone. And this is why tyrants are terrified, because it's freedom. Do you want to be free? That is our only identity. And it's really hard to be a communist against something like that. It's really hard to be a tyrant and exercise a fist of control over people when that is their identity. That's why CRT is the big thing being promoted, because it divides everything. And so when you look at people coming into the country, I'm all for merit. It has to be merit. We have every sovereign right to determine how many people we allow to come in and merit qualifications to come in. We do not have enough people in the United States going into STEM. We are not filing and getting patents at the same rate as other countries. China's outpacing us 3-1. When they're not stealing ours and refiling it. These are terrifying things. We're outsourcing everything to India. I had a conversation with someone about digital interruption because of so much digital information and the source of so many things being stored in India. We are not doing enough to be self-sustaining here at home. And one of the reasons I bring up, the melting pot phrase, which everyone apparently became out of vogue because it reminds everyone that our common identity is freedom, is because that's America. American identity is strong people who can make money, who can take care of themselves, and who want to be free. I want people like that, because people like that have families and they raise more people like that. And they vote the way I do. And I want that. I don't want people that are coming across the border, sneaking over, being shepherded in by cartels, and then they come in and they get on government entitlements, and then they are paid basically and bought off by Democrat Party to vote for the same kind of Democrat parties that created the country from where they're coming. There's a big difference. I'm not the only person saying this. Hispanic Americans are saying this all along the border towns. Democrats don't want to talk to them because they think everyone else is racist, but they want to shut out brown voices who vote conservative because they're conservative. This is what Republicans got to get a handle on. They don't know how to adequately talk about this. And you can't just throw out stupid red meat stuff that you heard somebody say on TikTok, and then you think you're going to repurpose that for a campaign talking point. Oh my gosh, stop.